Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. The time has finally come to put the body of the Beetle back onto the chassis. So in the previous video I managed to get this floor pan rolling just by putting the stub axles on, fitting up some steering gear. Also I put a new seal on there, but as well as that I have actually tapped out some holes. These are for the body mounts. There's two M10s at the back. Actually some Beetles have two more mountings underneath the rear seat. These ones on this particular model aren't used. And also I've just tapped out M10 again, the mounts at the front here that go in the valance. And with the body, I have taken the wings off for a couple of reasons. I would like to look at this area here as I lower the body down, but as well as that, I didn't want to damage them. So they've come off, and what I've also done is just unbolted and removed the deck lid. So in the past, I was lucky enough to have access to car ramps, which allowed me just to lower the bodies of Beetles back onto their chassis. Failing that, and if I had the chassis, I could get 4 strong guys to lift the body just back onto the pan. But unfortunately, I don't have access to a ramp, and I don't have 4 strong lads to help me lift the body back onto the car. So I'm going to go for the option that I used to remove the body in the first place, which was using a winch from the roof there, drop down with some straps on the bumper irons like that, and then just lifting it up, hopefully be able to push the chassis underneath and then plop the body back on. And underneath these heater channels, there's some M8 threads that run along the whole length here. What I've done is I've just tapped them out. I've used a tap with a bit of grease just to get them nice and clean, ready for the bolts. So I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm really not looking forward to this next stage. There's so many things that could possibly go a bit wrong. I mean, one of them is securing the car with a winch, and I'm not entirely sure how the body's going to sit, let alone that it's going to kind of turn around and do all sorts, and maybe I won't be able to get it lined up with the pan. I am worried about damaging the body and the chassis. There's so many things, but hey, let's give it a go. So the body at this point is almost in the position I want it. What I've done at the front here is I've just started off these front bolts that go through the beam onto the valance there, and I've reused the original rubbers because they're in pretty good condition. And at this rear panel here, there's also a rubber that sits in between. This is my one. It's looking pretty moody. It's definitely original. I didn't actually order any of these, but I did have a flap of rubber, and that's pretty much what it is, a flap of rubber with a hole in it. So that seemed to work pretty well. I was able to use the winch just to drop the body down onto the pan, and I've roughly lined it up. I'm going to leave the straps on the body just for this moment while I loose fit all the little M8 bolts that go underneath the floor onto the heater channel. So with the floor pan hardware, I did zinc coat these, but what I've done is I ran a dye down the threads of these bolts, but not only that, I have run a tap in the heater channel. What I also do is tiny smidge of something on there, something like a multi-purpose grease or a copper slip or anti-seizure compound can really work wonders for when you need to remove this in the future. One thing that I must say though, do not try to cross thread these. This is going to sound really odd, but you should be able to just nip them up with your fingers, providing the threads are clear. You should just be winding them up with your fingers. If you find that they go in a little bit wonky, you can actually damage the captive that's in the heater channel, which is going to cause you all sorts of problems. So I normally, if I can't do it up by finger tight, I run a tap through it again, and hopefully that does the trick. So that's all the pan bolts underside on both sides finger tight, along with the fixtures that bolt onto the front beam through the front clip. And the M10 bolts that go through the bottom here into the bulkhead, the bolts on the rear mount to the chassis, and the bolts that go on the inside of the car. So all those bolts are now finger tight. I do need to do them up, but as I could get them easily into the holes, I could see the alignment, it's pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead, do those up, and then that's another bit done. One thing I forgot to mention are these heater pipes here that go through the car on the interior, and they exit here under the boot floor. And generally on these earlier type Beetles, these are made of metal and the tubes are kind of welded into position. But later model Beetles, this part here is Bakelite along with the tube that runs under the floor. And these tend to get damaged and brittle and all sorts. You can even damage them putting the body on and off. But the thing is, they're very difficult to get to or even replace once the body's on. So if you do have a Bakelite section of tubing that runs through here, it might be an idea to think about replacing it before you put the body back on. So that's the body bolted down, and what I've done is I've jacked it up, put it on axle stands and removed the wheels. Then what I've done is I've gone round and tapped out all of the wing bolt holes, as well as the rear bumper iron holes. And then after I've tapped the holes out, I've just gone over there with an airline just to remove any swarf, any tiny bits of metal that are there, as if these are on the paintwork here, any moisture or water that will slip past the wing beading will actually turn to rust and it will drip down the inside. So best to remove as much swarf as possible. Not only that, the swarf can get caught in your cloth and you can actually scratch your paint. So what I need to do now is loosely refit the wings. Unfortunately for me, the fixtures that hold the wings on, the M8 bolts and the washers, are looking pretty crusty, so I think it's time to replace these. And I'll be using these. They're a stainless steel version of the M8 bolts and the washers. So you can buy the M8 bolts and the washers as a kit from your Volkswagen supplier, but these are actually cheaper to buy at the hardware store. And just make sure to plop a bit of grease or a bit of anti-seizure compounds on these bolts, as if you do have to remove them at some point, they'll be pretty easy to take back out again. So that's all the wings fitted onto the bug. I've just done the bolts up finger tight, allowing for quite a generous gap down the sides there. So the next thing I need to do is install the wing beading, and it's a seal that pretty much sits in between this gap here, leaves a nice bead in between this panel line. And at this point in a build, if you're doing it yourself, it is a good idea to replace it. Over time, these can become discolored and very brittle. And when it comes to wing beading, like this stuff here, there's quite a bit of choice. You can actually buy it on a roll, or you can buy it in pre-made strips that have already got little notches ready to be fitted to the car. But not only that, they're available in different colors. And I've chosen black. I was torn between black and grey. I thought grey would look pretty cool, but I've gone for the safe option. I hope I don't change my mind, but I'm going to go ahead and install black wing beading on this one. Something else that's worth noting, this wing beading is a plastic type, but in the past I did find a company, I believe it was MP, that produced a slightly rubberized wing beading, and it just seemed to fit very nicely, very snug, and it seemed to flow around the panel. But I'm going to try fitting this plastic one. So if you do decide to buy your wing beading on a roll like this, it pretty much is the case of just offering it up around the wing, finding out where the bolt holes are and just notching them out on the new beading. And what I like to do is start the beading pretty much at this level here, just below where the running board sits. And then at the front, I normally leave quite a long tail here, and what I can do is just pull it round so it can follow the contour of that panel. And when it comes to putting in the little notches on this beading, what I tend to do is use some side cutters, almost like an arrow, or it looks like the shape of a house. And then what I do is I use a belt sander just to finish those edges off. And what you should end up with is something that looks like this. And at this point you can go ahead and bolt that wing on, but I prefer to take the beading off and then just replicate it on another section of beading so I can use it for the other side. Sometimes in cold weather, this type of wing beading can get a bit hard and difficult to fit around the wing. So dropping it in a bucket of hot water can help. So now it's just a case of installing this wing beading and just nipping up the bolts ever so slightly as you go. Just try and make the beading as smooth as possible as it goes around the wing. Sometimes as you're nipping it up, you can't really move the beading, so you can put lubrication on there, something like a grease or an oil or even a silicone spray. So just by dropping this in a bucket of hot water, this has now become super supple, so I'm pretty happy to go ahead and fit it. And at the front here, just to finish off the wing beading, what I'll be doing is cutting a rather large slot here, but leaving a tiny tag just at the end. And what I can do then is roll this around the back, and that little tag there can go behind itself on the seal, and I can then bolt it back up. Then once you're happy that you've got the seal in the correct position, there's no lumpy bumpy bits or anything like that, it's just the case of just doing all the wing bolts up. And the rear wing beading is done pretty much the same way. So yet again, where the running board sits, I tend to trim it off, probably level with that cutout there at the bottom of the wing. And then at the back here, I do leave a little tail on the back just so I can put that wide notch in there, just fold it round for a neater job. And there you go. That's 4 wings fitted and 1 body. So no real dramas today, but when it came to fitting the body, I really would suggest use a bunch of strong people to help you lift the body on, or if you have access to a ramp, use that. Using a winch to put the body back on, for me, was a little bit touch and go. I did get quite a few grey hairs. So I'm pretty much done for today. I did manage to get quite a bit achieved, so chuffed that the body is now back on the pan. Anyway, I see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in as always. Cheers! One last thing before you guys go, just like to know your comments on this. I've fitted the black wing beading and now I'm actually looking at it. I'm thinking it might be, well, a bit too black. Should I have gone for a lighter grey colour? Oh, maybe I should have ordered both and just checked them out.